What's up, everybody? I hope you've been enjoying some of the recent content on this channel. It's good to be back, and I'm currently working on another major project that is Halo specific. However, my wife and I actually just had a baby, so I've spent most of my recent time with the family, and thus that project is pushed back a bit. But I wanted to keep up with the consistent uploads, and while writing this new Halo project, it kind of dawned on me that I never really put a bow on Infinite and what I thought about it. So that's what this video is. Kind of a general, very casual overview of how I view Infinite now. We are not going to go in depth. This is not me making any crazy complex arguments or anything, but hopefully it can tide you over until the next essay and also kind of act as a primer so you know my mindset going forward. And look, I'm calling these my final thoughts, but this is not a dramatic I'm boycotting the game or I'm done with Halo. The reality is I stopped playing Infinite regularly a long time ago. I stopped making content for it a long time ago. Being involved with the game as a forerunner and having that perspective and that pre-existing experience, I knew the game wasn't for me, just fundamentally. But after my initial review and thoughts, I was content to let Infinite run its course. If you saw my review of Infinite way back when it came out, and I'll link it in the description, you'll kind of already know what my thoughts are, and I feel pretty vindicated about a lot of what I said back then. And I was pretty adamant, despite the honeymoon phase leading many to believe Halo was back, I was pretty sure this game was going to struggle, and struggle it certainly did. I didn't believe in it, but if Infinite was going to be the Halo for the next 10 years, then what's the point for me to keep talking about it? Because so many of my issues were fundamental and more about its overarching design philosophy, it would have been a disservice to try and steer it or influence it in any real way, because it just was never going to be for me no matter what they did. And so I feel like if I just let things play out, eventually whatever the truth is would reveal itself, and either A, I'd be right and the game wouldn't do well long term, or B, I'd be wrong and Infinite would prosper and Halo would be great and successful, and I would just have to admit that this franchise isn't for me anymore and it's successful in spite of it not doing what I think it should do. And okay, I could walk away content with that. But Infinite, 2 years later, after countless updates and admittedly some good improvements, I feel as though it is safe to say that Infinite is indeed not the future of Halo. But let's be positive for once. Let's start with the good. I think generally Infinite took at least half a step in the right direction. We decreased a lot of the enhanced mobility direction that Halo 5 took, and we transferred our avenue of innovation to more of a sandbox-driven game. It was more about the stuff you found on the map. Equipment was a primary feature, and they were pickups, which is good. You could interact with stuff like fusion coils by picking them up and throwing them. There was an emphasis on BTB and vehicle combat. The grappling hook had a ton of cool interactions. It was certainly a step, and I think over time other issues started to get addressed. Obviously, over 2 years we got a lot more content. When Forge arrived, it was by far the best Forge we had ever gotten. It has insane potential, and going forward could elevate Halo to heights we've never seen before. I even think the map design has gotten more creative. Whether the maps are legendary or exceptional, I'm just kind of excited to see them experiment a bit. We are getting a ton more interactivity. We have maps like Prism that feature exploding needle blamite that you can shoot. Then we recently got maps like Illusion, which structurally is very much a 3-lane map, but has a pretty ballsy interactive element where the middle lane is actually super wide open from one side to the other, which allows for a ton of long-range engagements. But the middle section has a neutral augment that will cloak everyone within it, which makes for an interesting dynamic where you have those long-range engagements where you can see each other from one side to the other and have these long-ranged fights. But then the actual route is still traversable due to the cloaking, and honestly, it's a unique dynamic. I like it a lot. Then the newest map, Elevation, which yes is a Forge map, but this has a lot of cool stuff going on as well. I like that they're playing with zero-G. I like that they're willing to utilize a bit more verticality. And when I criticized Infinite's launch maps, this is some of the stuff I was hoping to see. And going forward, I'd like to see more. Not so that these maps dominate the map pool, but if we can create a strong collection of maps where we have a combination of simple, complex, dynamic, and static, then we can make the roster more interesting overall, and with Forge getting as insane as it's getting, then for future projects we can really start improving Halo's roster and using Forge to fill holes where needed. We also had a pretty big decision to replace the BR with an alternative utility weapon. As someone who criticized the BR very early and to a significant degree, it was encouraging to see them realize that and at least try to address it. Now, I still think Infinite Sandbox has a ton of issues, but again, I'm just pointing out growth and acknowledging making good decisions when I see them. And then of course Halo Infinite has just received a lot more content, period. That was a problem we knew would eventually be addressed, and thankfully 343 did eventually reach a point where content became more consistent. And I'd argue the best content for the game just overall has come post-launch. So I wanted to acknowledge that the game has seen improvements. It's gotten more content, it has gotten more creative, and I'm hopeful that the future for Halo is still bright. But that future is not Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite is still mechanically flawed. While it's great that it is sandbox driven, the sandbox direction is, in my opinion, very poorly considered. Again, my review discusses the specifics of all that. And while I do think the game has reached a state of competency, and I'm sure it can be decent fun, I still don't think it's a special game. And that's what my expectations for Halo are. Special. And look, I think unfortunately, a lot of us are kind of in a Halo bubble, especially if we already enjoy the game for what it is. Our perception when all the new content gets here and the updates arrive and we get a little population boost, we start thinking, yeah, this is it. This is the direction for Halo. 343 did it. But it's extremely important to have perspective. I'm glad you like Infinite, and I'm glad that 343 stepped up their game a bit and delivered some good content, and I understand why that content might make you excited, but it is very dangerous to take anything Infinite has done, or just Infinite in general, and use it as the guiding light to take Halo into the next era. It is dangerous to pretend that Halo Infinite was a success because it wasn't. It arguably represents one of Halo's darkest eras, and we need to have a little perspective on that. Ironically, I think 343 understands this more than some of these fans I see gassing this game up. Don't let anybody gaslight you into thinking that Halo Infinite solved any debates or settled Halo's identity crisis. Last I checked, the broader audience still isn't playing, at least in contrast to what this series has achieved in the past or what other games are achieving now. And if you feel like less people are complaining, like me who didn't make a video for a year and a half, well, if nobody's complaining and not that many people are playing, that's worse. That means people have reached a very upsetting level of engagement, which is indifference. At least if they were passionately opposed to something, that means they cared. Now, you can argue this, you can say Halo's doing fine, and you can ignore all the evidence to the contrary, but now 2 years later, after countless updates, Infinite is still averaging less than 6,000 concurrent players on Steam, and I'm being generous with that number. The last time it averaged more than that for a month was in May of 2022, and well, Halo's played in more places than just Steam, sure. But on day one, that's certainly where a lot of people chose to start their journey. 256,000 people started their Halo Infinite experience on Steam. So we cannot discredit this as a drop and act like, oh, well, that's just not where most people are playing. It's the biggest PC platform in the world. But let's look at Xbox anyway. It's still out of the top 20. And argue all you want about Halo having less competition back when it held the #1 spot, and sure, Halo doesn't need to be #1 or 2 or 3, but it's not even in the top 20. And another thing you need to realize is that Xbox in general is less popular than it used to be. So outside of the top 20 on a system that is so utterly and convincingly losing the console war that there were very recent rumors that Microsoft might leave the console business entirely and focus on multi-platform, which thankfully seems to not be true. I want them to keep competing, but the fact that those rumors appeared and needed to be addressed publicly should indicate that they are no longer the console they were when Halo was sitting at #1, and they might have been doing better at the time because they had a game worthy of being #1. But there's more to consider. And look, people losing their job is not funny. That's not something to celebrate. I literally lost my job 2 months ago when the company I worked for just shut its doors for good after 75 years. I know how scary that uncertainty is, how unfair that feels to the people who probably lost their job to no fault of their own. But we cannot forget the events that happened because of Infinite's performance. The layoffs, the revolving door of leadership changes that were reported on pre- and post-launch, culminating in Bonnie Ross and Joseph Staten. Not saying they were fired, very possible they elected to leave, but the constant change in leadership and management is absolutely 100% a sign of instability and turmoil. It can be nothing but that. Huge stretches early on of not having content, of clearly not being ready, of clearly having issues behind the scenes. I mean, non-Halo YouTubers, the broader, more general gaming content creators were making videos calling 343 Industries the worst studio in the world. Hyperbolic? Absolutely. But a testament to the sentiment that people were feeling? An indication of the reputation that was developing? Certainly. It was so bad that 343 Industries had to make an official statement to clarify that they would even be making Halo anymore. The public perception reached a point where they had to clarify that. It felt so grim. That is the legacy of Halo Infinite. And the only thing we should try to learn from it is what not to do, how not to think. Whatever data is telling you how to do things and how not to do things, it's not working. So those within the Halo bubble, they may think Infinite is a great foundation, but look around. The results do not indicate that. Whatever foundation Infinite represents is merely the remnants of a once monolithic gaming juggernaut that has slowly decayed and rotted and crumbled due to years of poor stewardship. We now sit on the ground floor of a franchise that once stood above all others and looked down at them from unparalleled heights. And the sentiment regarding Halo for the gaming community in general, we have a negative reputation, and we are drifting towards indifference. There is a lot of internal and kept away passion that I think millions still have. Everyone's ears perk up a little bit when they hear about a new Halo project. It's still in there. It was so formative for the industry and the people within it. It meant a lot to a lot of people, but it does not have an active hold on people like it did a decade ago. It would need a special game to get that back, and again, Infinite is not that game. Read the tea leaves. Infinite was supposed to be a 10-year title, and when it was struggling to deliver content, they spoke passionately about achieving seasonality. Well, they did that. But literally, we only made it to Season 5 before they said, oh, we're shifting our mindset on delivering content. We're not doing seasons anymore. We're doing content updates now, while simultaneously announcing that new Halo projects were in the works.
We have a dedicated team working on supporting Halo Infinite and continuing to deliver going forward. But also, yes, we have additional teams now that are accelerating towards the future, working on brand new projects. So I just want to tantalize you with that. So
now, that doesn't mean Halo Infinite is dead. That doesn't mean it's not going to receive support. I'm sure it still will for a while. But ending seasonality is a way of taking a bit of pressure off so that they can deliver content a bit more leisurely. And the talk of new projects indicate, to me at least, that the 10-year plan is no more. And regarding my final thoughts on Infinite, I think that's good. I never thought Infinite was a strong foundation. I said as much in my videos that we should learn from it, but that we will need another game. And I'll be honest, a 10-year plan for Infinite would have aged me out. I'm 29, I'm married with 2 kids. Infinite was not for me and was never going to be, so if that happened, then that's fine, all yours. I'm not waiting till I'm damn near 40 years old to see what the next one's like, but if we do have another game on the horizon, then I got one more round in me. I got one final effort, and that effort will be represented by a trilogy of videos that I am working on that will go into extreme detail and outline a very clear and very defined direction for Halo to take. Not just the what, but the why, the reasoning, and the logic behind it. It will represent a blueprint, and hopefully it will illuminate the potential of this franchise, but at the very least, hopefully, provide some finality and understanding to what we have been fighting for the last 10 years. A vision of the Halo that could be. And we do not have an unlimited amount of attempts left to get this right. Like I said, we are drifting towards indifference, and the next major Halo project needs to be bold, confident, and special. Because as we established, Infinite ain't it. I said that 2 years ago, and it still ain't it. And whatever compromise you think it represents, it didn't work. Whatever debates you think it solved, it didn't. And you know what? Let me just get this out of the way, because everyone on Twitter says we're not allowed to talk about this anymore and that it's a settled argument. And this is just one example of the fucked up Halo bubble that has our design sense massively skewed. But nerfing sprint to less than a 10% difference is not solving the sprint debate. That's just admitting that it's a huge problem and trying to have your cake and eat it too. If we as a community are praising something for not being good, then we are in deep shit. bullshit. That's like arguing in favor of pseudo-placebo. Oh, 343 did a great job with Sprint this time. It's barely even useful. Okay, so that's like horrible design to include something, increase input intensity, and then purposefully make it have as little impact as possible. Everybody in the world who plays video games that doesn't know shit about this debate will think that is fucking stupid, because it is. If it's really useless, then remove it. Just bite the fucking bullet and remove the design dilemma once and for all. How many hours, how much dev time has been wasted on trying to make this mechanic work, only for the genius solution after 10 years of failed attempts being to make it fucking dog shit. Oh, well, it's not actually useless. It enables slide, and slides are really nutty. Okay, so if Sprint enables slide, and slide does all this crazy shit where you can launch yourself off of geometry and manipulate your hitbox, then it's still having a huge effect on Halo's formula. I mean, are we still talking about this? Are we still arguing this? I mean, the debate's settled. Now, you know what? I'm not going to be gaslit into acting like Infinite's gameplay is the solution, or that we should build on it. If the debate is over, then Halo lost. And yeah, with the whole Sprint deal, I'm just having a little bit of fun as the quote-unquote Sprint guy. It's more than just that. It's always been more than that. So that's why we are going to talk about all of it. I believe the argument has never really been about sprint versus no sprint, or mobility versus no abilities, or modern versus classic. I think for the past 12 years, the divide has really just been between people who believe in Halo's original formula and people who don't care. Now, you might not fall into that category. You may have a specific proclivity to Halo 5 or Infinite or 4, I guess, probably not. But for a lot of people, they just like Halo. Halo is Halo, Halo is Halo as long as it says Halo on the box, and as long as it says Halo on the box, they're showing up and they're going to just appreciate it for what it is. Infinite would have blown up if it just had a better launch. It's not the mechanics. Guys, this is the exact same thing that happened with Halo 5. You said the exact same thing about the last one. Halo 5 allegedly had the best gameplay in the series, but also only failed because of its launch. And yet when they gutted the alleged best gameplay in the series you all loved so much and cut mobility options in half for Infinite, oh, well now Infinite has the magic formula we should build on. No, you guys, a lot of you just like everything, and that's fine. But that also probably means you'd end up liking the Halo that we are about to make an argument for. And so consider that. If this theoretical Halo that we are going to talk about, if you'd also like it, and if by the end of this trilogy of projects I'm going to do, if you can see a little magic, if you can see that it might appeal to more than just me, and more than just you, but if you think it might be special, I just ask that you hear me out. I promise, I know I can be a dick, but I'm going to be as nice as I can for this. If I can convince you that this formula is special, just consider supporting and spreading the word about the project. And even if Halo never utilizes it for itself, I'm hoping I can at least inspire somebody to give it a chance. See you soon.